Welcome to Simulation Pulse Live. Today is the first day of November 2024, and it's Halloween, the day after Halloween. So I thought we would kick it off with our costumes today. So this is not
Yes,
going to be
although I think,
sustainable,
John, we
Bill.
should consider whether we should start this way every week.
That's
People would
right.
show up just to see what we're wearing.
Just to see what we're wearing, wear costumes, whatever it takes, raising awareness. So I'm going to take mine off here. I'm sure
All right.
my voice is kind of muffled.
Oh,
Keep my hood, keep my hood on. Nah. Well, I think we'll have Bill joining us a little later, but we don't really have an agenda. But there's one thing I did want to talk about is something we've been touching on periodically throughout the course of these events, but the importance of establishing a community of Acadicus users. I just talked to Dr. Slayman this morning, and it's one of the things that we continuously identify as the biggest potential of Acadicus in the long run, but something that's very difficult to get started. And it's hard to get everybody on the same page because the people that are working with us, these are innovative people that are very, very busy and they don't have time. And, I had sort of assumed that, well, we do this Pulse Live every Friday. If the community wants to join us, it's open to the public. They can come in here and they can meet each other. But
hmm.
it's hard when you do this every Friday. Not everybody knows like which day to join. They can't join every Friday. They don't have time. So, um, but it doesn't diminish the potential power of that community. And we see when it works, how powerful it really is when some of the customers that are working with Acadicus are working together to facilitate simulations. There's cross-disciplinary collaboration. Like some of the most exciting things that have ever happened have come from those intersections in our community where, I think it was Jeff from InHealth and Mitch Luker from NWTC and Dr. Slayman from DuPont Children's Hospital working together to run a mock code during the pandemic. It was like
Hmm.
three different organizations, three different people. And there were several other people there. I think there was a resident that was joining from California who actually led the code at the time. And it's all these people coming together, and they can be all over the world. They can be on different parts of the country, different campuses, different
Hmm.
regional hospitals or clinics, depending on what your context is. But that facilitating that community connection is something we need to work. I think there's more we could do to facilitate that. And I just thought we'd talk a little bit about like maybe just brainstorm, how can we do that?
Hmm.
One of the things that we did recently was earlier this year was we used to have a community of practice event every quarter. And that was open to all of our customers. All Acadicus users could come to it. And because we were doing these Pulse Live episodes, we kind of replaced those community of practice events with this. But in hindsight, I think that might have been a mistake. I want to revisit the possibility of having our community of practice events and figure out how to make those really, how to help facilitate those connections between our customers, because we've got so many different people doing so many different interesting things, but they don't know about
Hmm.
each other. And so yeah, let's get Bill in here. Well, what we were talking about, Bill, is
Yeah.
um, the importance of community in Acadicus, the between customers that are using the software. And I was sharing with Rick that I think we might have made a mistake in transitioning from our community of practice events that we were having into the Pulse Live episodes. Because I was thinking we put a lot of time and energy into doing these episodes. This is sort of where our community could or should be. We have this every Friday. Customers are invited always. Anybody can come. But the problem is our customers are busy. They can't always be coming in here every Friday, and you never know what's going to be happening from one Friday to the next. And I think the community of practice was nice because it was once every quarter. And that's something you can pretty confidently put on your calendar and feel like once a quarter, I can
Hmm.
put some time, an hour or two into this platform that you're working with. And so I would really like to sort of revisit that and to have those community of practice events. And I know Bill, you were, doing a lot with those as well and helping coordinate, because I think the thing that we really need to do is get the communication happening between our customers, because the three of us see what's going on and we see what
Hmm.
some of these customers are doing phenomenal things, and we're trying to share that with the world, but we need them to work together, because when they do, it becomes something so much greater. It's almost like a new dimension or a new level of simulation that hasn't been possible, where no matter where you're physically located, you can work together with other innovators to run simulation. And I was just talking to Dr. Slayman this morning, and he shared that, he knows that there's, he'll stumble into something that another customer is doing with Acadicus, and it just blows his mind. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why didn't he know about that? And why don't they know about what he's
Mm-hmm.
doing? He's building all these learning labs in his lab where he's talking about, ECMO and
I love that.
all kinds
Yeah.
of different things. So community of practice, and how do we get that going, is basically what I wanted to talk about today.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, the main thing, you're kind of right. So like Fridays can be hard for people. Fridays can be good too. Like for me, Fridays are good. But some people too on Fridays, that's sort of a day to catch up too. It can be a day that they're working on, like right now I'm needing to switch over from the Rift S to the Meta 3 on my laptops, right? And so that may be my day to do that. It may be like, well, that's what I'm going to work on today. And you kind of get in a groove and you forget and you go, oh, wait a minute. So so yeah, I can definitely see how that can be. I think there's value to both. I think there's definitely value to both in that, especially because I think the Simpulse is a little bit more for, not just customers, but non-customers as well. Is like, let's see what's out there. If I'm somebody and I'm looking around for some VR possibilities, what things do I want to do? How do I want to go about this? Simpulse is a good info session for that. The community of practice, yeah, it's more about bringing the actual actors together, the people that are already working on things, and talking about like even areas of difficulty you may be having, right? Here are some of the things I'm struggling with, or this is something that an instructor came to me about and said, "Hey, I'd really like to do this. Is this possible?" Um, and how can we put something like that together? And it's also good too because like when Dr. Slayman, I think it was Dr. Slayman was putting together they were doing the development of the code card, right? The crash card. And like that's a good thing for other people to know it's coming. Now I knew it was coming, so I was pretty happy about that because I had a nursing instructor come to me and say, "Hey, we're in need of a good crash cart in here. Can we put that on our budget for custom development?" And I was like, "Well, hold on. We don't need to do that." So there's a lot of things that can be shared at those quarterly meetings. And you can even make it to where it's like every other month or something like that, so that people feel a little bit more involved. My only concern with quarterly is like they feel like they're a little less involved, maybe they're a little more pulled away. You're right. It is easier to look at something quarterly and go, "Oh, I think I can make that." But sometimes it's also good to meet a little closer together. So
Yeah, maybe once a month. Is that too
could be.
often?
Well, and I think, the other thing that this speaks to is I know in healthcare, and Bill, you can confirm for me, but I think also in higher ed, there is everybody is driven by community standards, right? Everybody does have their own individual practice, obviously, but boy, it is all driven about who has done what and how has it worked somewhere else, because it's hard to be the person or the organization to first of all put those resources out there and take that risk to be first, right? It's always more comfortable when there's a Bill, right, who's kind of paved the way and people are now, now our organization wants to build an XR lab again, right? What's the standard that's being developed? Well, now you can look at what Bill has done at his organization and what Mitch managed to do at his place. And now we've just seen, who is it that just opened? John, shoot,
Jamie,
their XR
Oh,
Center,
Western
Jamie
Technical.
over at
Western,
Western.
Jamie
Western.
Howell.
Yes, right. So we're starting to see these now build, right, on each other, right? Western visited, I think, with you, Bill, right? And I think they saw Mitch and they went back. And so now you're kind of seeing this reference point that people love to look at before, we kind of don't want to be first, that's natural. And so they're looking to share, how have you done it so that I don't have to figure it all out on my own. And so, yeah, I
Absolutely.
think that sharing, Jon, you go to the conference every January. And again, that's what all these conferences are all about. Who's doing what and how are you doing it so that I can get those ideas and kind of bring them into my organization.
Definitely.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
agreed. Yeah, and I didn't realize how important that was. And I will look at what other people are doing, obviously. But for me, it was more like I want to do what I think is going to work best, or
Mhm,
I'm willing to sort of go out there and be a first, or not have to watch what someone else did in order to determine what we're going to do. Um, but I that was tough for me when I had a lot of people that came in and would say, "Yeah, I'd love to incorporate VR into my classes. Can I come and watch, someone else?" And I'm like, "Why do people need to watch? I don't get, for me it was like I don't get it, but it's very important for people to do and to watch and to see, what other people are doing too. And whether or not you like that sort of, I don't want to watch and I want to go and pave the road, or you want to sort of walk on some things that are already paved and maybe smooth them out a little bit. Like,
mhm,
I think there are a lot of people that really appreciate that sort of watching others. So
mhm. Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. And look at just, this past year, the occasions when we've had some guests on this episode, what we've learned,
Yeah.
and I look back especially at Jake and the US Army Research Group, man, that blew my mind, right? I took so many ideas from that and ran with them. Mitch did also. And then, we had other folks, and
Now,
I
Dr.
think
Slayman
that's
is all
so
about those
valuable.
learning labs too, those micro learning labs. That's
Micro
a
learning
whole bunch of
labs,
different
right?
scenarios that he's developing and wants to share with everybody else. And it's just tremendously powerful content, but if nobody knows that it exists, it doesn't get anywhere. Like we need to make sure that
Yeah,
they're
and so
aware of where that is and how do you access it and share that and get people talking about it.
yeah, I mean, this kind of outgrowth from, almost the original purpose of a catechus as this sim lab, right? You're going through an experience to now, well, now it's expanded and it can be this lecture lab that's very, again, alive and has all this dynamic content that you just can't do in a regular classroom or with a PowerPoint presentation. And, who knows what else people will, come to use it for or figure it out. But it is by all this kind of experimentation and what did you do and how did you do that? And yeah, that's the exciting part. And that gets to what Bill was saying, right? Not being afraid to be first and trying some things out. And hey, we don't usually do this, but let's see if we can do this. And sure.
yeah, when I got my hands on a catechus early on, I looked at it as more of a lecture tool initially. I
Mhm.
really I saw it
Some of
as
your
more of
anatomy
a,
stuff I saw early on. You were
yeah.
lecturing.
I was like, I think for me, starting out because it was pre-pandemic, I think a lot of the driving force during the pandemic, post-pandemic was how can we work clinical replacement? How can we work, simulation replacement, those kind of things, or how can we gap fill, those kind of things. I looked at it initially. I was like, I was taken by the fact that I could pick up this beating heart and I could, show it it's cut in half. I could explain the blood flow through the heart better. I could explain the way that the valves open and close better and all that kind of stuff. And I looked at that more in that way initially early on, and we started talking, John. We started talking clinical replacement probably in April, I want to
Yeah.
say, of 2020, because we knew that there was going to be an issue. We knew like, oh, this is going to go bad. And we started putting stuff together early on. I mean, I think I still have my initial setup, where it was 4 patients They went and saw each of the patients. None of them were Gen 2 patients. They were all the like Gen 1 and stuff like that. And even Simon, who I don't even know if he falls into one of the generations. But then we started like, okay, how can we replace this? And even as a learning tool, bringing the student in and then working on the learning itself, rather than just seeing it as completely a simulation and we can't, like it's summative, we can't put our hands on or whatever. We looked at it in the formative sense. And I think that's key too. And I think for growth within your program, if you're gonna grow further with Acadicus, the way to do that is to start looking at like how can I use it as more than just a simulation tool. You have the sim lab, which is like that's the most powerful part of Acadicus. But I think there's a lot of power too in how can I bring this into my lecture realm? How can I bring it into my theory? Those kind of things. And I love it for that. I absolutely love it for that. Dr. Sai, our vet, just came in last week and did a new 3D recording with us because he wanted his students to come in. Unfortunately, the lab was booked. Like he wanted them to come in, I think it was next week or whatever, and the lab was booked. And so he said, well, can I come in and do a 3D recording? And then that way I can show it to my students. And, I was like, yeah, why aren't we doing that? Yeah, come on, get in here. Let's do this. So I'm going to take that 3D recording, transfer it to a 2D recording form as well. But now he can also send his students to the lab so we can make appointments. So think of ways that you can grow, using Acadicus as that means of growth.
Yeah, and I think it's, these headsets and in developing a VR lab, is an investment for any organization. You're buying the PCs and the headsets and you've got to have staff that can support it. And if all you're going to do is run live simulations, you're sort of cornering yourself back into that limitation of physical live simulation where you have to have everybody in the same place at the same time. And you're right, Bill. It's like that's the highest, bandwidth, highest fidelity that you can get. And we want to do that all the time. But when you can't do that, you don't want those headsets sitting there collecting dust. And I think this is a great way to make sure that, students have an opportunity to go in and participate in simulations, and they can do it as many times as they want. They can go over and over and over again. They can come in during off hours when it's not going to be class time. They can, have access to that when there isn't an instructor present. And that just multiplies the value of that lab. And there's certain students that are visual learners that are going to be like hyper accelerated by this kind of modality. And I think if we can get the more students have access to that, the better. And those asynchronous opportunities give them that in combination with those live simulations that really take it to the next level. You can do both.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, like you say, capture it out to 2D, put it up on YouTube or a part of your LMS, and now you have an even better access. Hi there.
John, we have someone famous here.
Oh boy.
We have
A
someone
famous
famous.
Acadicus. Yeah.
Acadicus famous here.
Yes.
The
That's
voice
right.
of the pediatric pain scenario. Here she is.
The
right
voice
here.
of the pediatric scenario is here. Great. Welcome. Welcome to Pulse Live.
She was
Thanks
sneaking in.
again
She
for
had-
all your help.
Bill,
think a
have you
lot of
ever
people really
showed
like
her? Have you ever showed her that scenario
Yes.
like in VR? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And we
great.
used it at
Yeah.
Goodman South 2 weeks ago. And it was really funny to hear, and remember how we were recording it. So yeah.
Well, and that was how many years ago?
Oh,
It's getting a couple
Oh.
years now, right?
Yeah, at least 2 years, maybe even
3 years ago. Yeah, it could have been.
You know,
Yep.
that you were such a good actress too, because I remember some of the parts where you have to say that you're in a lot of pain because it's the pain scale, right? So some of them you're in a lot of pain, and I felt your pain in those recordings, like where you're like, no, ouch, like that hurts. Like you did a really good job of being very convincing that you're in a lot of pain. Like that was great.
He got a bat and he
Well,
said I'm gonna hit you so that we can get realistic crying. But he ended up putting the bat on the floor to show where I was gonna stand.
yeah.
I was going to say, was he pinching you?
Yeah.
I was getting ready to edit that out. Like, uh-oh. She
Yeah.
actually was in pain.
I pulled out a bat, right? Because I was going to place it on the floor where the distance I wanted her from the microphone. So I pulled out a bat and she looked at it and I was like, well, we have to do a pain scenario here. And she looked at me like, wait, what? And then I put the
What
bat
have I
in the
committed
I said,
to?
this is where you're going to stand. And she's like, oh, so
You're not paying me enough for this.
What
that's
did I
right.
sign up for?
That's right. Well, thank you for coming and saying hello to everyone on Simpulse today.
Good
So,
seeing you.
yeah. Thank you, sweetie.
You're welcome.
Yeah. All right. You have fun. Day off of school today.
Yeah. I think the
Man.
teachers don't want to deal with kids after Halloween night.
No.
Just good luck.
Man.
Good
All
planning
amped
on
up
their
on
part.
Baby Ruth and Butterfingers and everything
That's
else,
it.
trying to get your schoolwork done. Not going to happen.
So true.
I gave away granola and trail mix and natural fruit roll-ups last night,
Oh,
and
nice.
I didn't think anyone would take them, but there's nothing left in the bowl, so somebody enjoyed those.
Yeah, honestly, I love that kind of stuff. My kids like that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Mhm.
Hey, I've got it pulled up here, John. Actually, I know maybe this is off topic, but here is that original. So I'm gonna share my screen here real quick. Let me just
Yeah,
pull this
please
to the
do.
side. So we were talking about that original, like when we finally sort of needed to then do actually let me stop sharing because I didn't share the audio. When we needed to make that switch and say, well, now we need to look more at simulation. And
Oh,
so
I remember this scene. Yep.
this is it. Yeah, I mean, so this is where it started for my students, and this is right smack in the middle of the pandemic. This is like summer of 2020 we were creating this. And the idea here is this patient is congestive heart failure patient. And then what I would do, right, is they would make a treatment decision. They were going to put them on CPAP, that kind of stuff. They'd tell me to put it on because most of them were meeting with me over WebEx. And they'd tell me to put it on. Okay, here's what we want to do. Okay, great. And then we'd step away. We'd go to the next patient. And Simon had a tension pneumo. And there's his X-ray with the actual tension pneumo. You can see the collapsed
That's
lung.
right.
And so they had to identify it as a simple pneumo and then tension pneumo. And then Amit here was an asthma patient that they had to treat. And then Simon again, but as a COVID pneumonia. And I just made him like a twin brother of the other guy. They were truck drivers and they're driving through Madison and they were twin brothers. So, and one
That's
has
right, I remember.
has COVID pneumonia. So,
A lot going on with that family.
yeah,
Mom
yeah, I
must
know.
be really worried.
And then, so what I would do after that is we'd come back, right? Come back and let's see how Miles is doing, right?
Right,
And
because you were changing that in the simulation manager while they were over talking to the
Correct.
angry Simon. You
Yep.
were in here changing the vital signs, so when they come back to Miles, now his indications are different. His vitals are different, and you have to make a different choice or decide
Yep.
what to do next.
Yep. And on the vitals monitor, I would just then change it, and I dumped his blood pressure and I raised his heart rate and all that kind of stuff. And the student was like, "Oh, okay." So, but I took it as a learning experience too, right? So they would go through and they would do it, and then I would pull them away. And I actually, it's funny because what I did was I pulled them to right over here, and like the student would hang out here so we did it via our VDI, but that's a completely different story altogether. But the student would hang out here in non-viewer mode, and then I was in headset, and then we would talk. Okay, why did Miles' blood pressure go down? What happened? What was the mechanism that caused that? Those kind of things. And so we would talk about it in terms of more of a theory style, like looking at this as more theory. Okay, so yes, this all happened. Why did that happen? And why did what we did, the intervention that we did, why did that change it? Okay, and now what's the difference between a simple pneumothorax and tension pneumothorax? And how did you know the dividing line for Simon? right? Where was the dividing line from when Simon went from simple pneumo to tension pneumo? What was the line for you? And that should have to do with hemodynamics. And then with Amita, it was a simple asthma patient. Okay, what was your choice? Why did you choose to give him the medication? Why did you choose to use the meds on him? And it was because of his SpO2, right? And then what things should happen after you have now figured out that Simon's brother here, that he has COVID pneumonia. So what things do you need to do? It's as simple as that. You don't have to get too massively complex. Just asking the students to critically think as to why they did what they did, first of all. But then what do they have to do next? Because the next thing that's going to have to happen with him, we got to get him in isolation. Like, why is he still here? He needs to be
why?
He needs to be in an ISO room. He needs to, and then at first, like, he fought them on wearing his mask and stuff like that. He was very angry. He was very upset. He was claiming that everything was, a conspiracy and all of that, right? And so they had to deal with that patient's, like his attitude, right? And of course, I'm acting as a patient the whole time and just changing my accent, and a couple times I up on the accents, but yeah. And then we went and saw a pediatric patient, and then we did a cardiac arrest scenario. But that's just, I mean, that you can do that. You can do that in your theory course, and I have an instructor that does it with our birthing mannequin, where she has them kind of go through a bit of a scenario with the birthing mannequin, but then they sort of stay in VR and everybody else is watching on the screen, and she kind of talks about, like, okay, so what should you have done when the baby's head was coming out, and how would you have handled that, and those kind of things. And so, and of course it's in nursing and LPN, and they're like, where's the provider, and we kept playing this game of, I don't know. I haven't seen him. Dr. Allen is not around. We don't know where he is. And they like went down the hallway looking for him, like, where's he at? And we're just like, we don't know. And so they had to deliver the baby on their own. But yeah, I mean, that's just some ways that you can add it into your theory course. So
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Bill. That's awesome.
yeah, absolutely.
I'd forgotten about that scene, and I think that actually helped catalyze development of that forebay. I think that environment we used, you were able to use those
That's what
partitions
it
to
brought to
make
mind
that.
while I was looking at it.
Yeah. And then now we have that forebay. You could even do it, and a lot of that content. That's a cool thing about Acadicus is going back, a year or two or three. You realize how far we've come because we could do that so much better now. We have so much more content and so much more interactivity. The new vitals monitor, that was pre-Gen 2 patients. That was, so yeah, very cool.
I had to scroll through the vitals monitors to figure out
That's
which one I
right.
wanted. I was like,
That's right.
is it that one? Is that green? No. Okay. Is it that one? No. That's it. There it is. And that was before I realized point and click at it, Bill. But okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And now you can
So
lock them. Now you can lock
yeah.
them in your sim manager too. Yep.
Yep.
Very
And you
cool.
can have them directly connected to that patient. So yeah. I mean, that's what the community practice is really about, right? What
Yep.
we just did right there. That's sort of what community practice is about. Is like, here are the things that I did early on, and here are some of the things that I'm doing now, and it's the same for all of us, right? Because I can listen to what somebody else is doing and go, ooh, wow, good idea. Like, that's neat. We can do that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I know there's quite a few customers, I think if they had seen that, would right away, even now, just be like, oh, yeah, I never thought of that. I didn't realize you could do that. Or that inspires me to create something like that, but I want to take it in this direction. And yeah, it's just, that's what we need to facilitate. Because we have all the pieces. We have innovative customers that are doing incredible things. We have a platform where we can have multiple participants. We have all of the pieces in place. We just need to help facilitate that collaboration between those users.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah, totally agree.
Well, is there anything else we want to talk about today, or do we want to cut this one short and get back to our Friday? I guess the last parting thought that I would have, unless there's anything else, is just that I would charge the three of us with the task of reigniting that community of practice. and let's get a date on the calendar. Let's do it maybe early
Mhm.
first couple of weeks of December, because that gives us a month to prepare and notify everybody. But I need your help. Let's work together on that. Like, let's pester
Absolutely.
each other on our Slack channel. Like, hey, what's going on? We need that community of practice, and get the newsletter out ahead of time so everybody's aware of it. Let's get an
Yeah.
agenda. Let's figure out how to get the conversation flowing, just like it is with us. Like, let's get people talking, and because I ultimately want to get out of the way. I want to be invisible, right? I might even just turn my camera off and be on mute. I'll be here to answer questions if you have it, but it's about the customers. It's
Yeah.
about the users and what they're doing and getting them talking to each other. And I know you guys are both very good at that, like getting them talking. So I think let's focus on that. Let's get a date on the calendar and let's promote it and spread the word.
Yeah, that sounds
Let's do
great.
that.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Exciting.
And let's see it let's see if the three of us can maybe even get a meeting together for just the three of us, and
Yeah,
let's talk about it. Because there are definitely ways to get things going and make decisions on, what things
Mhm.
would we want to talk about on agendas. And I usually start my community practice with other things, with saying, tell me something you're doing right now that you want everyone to know, and tell me something that you want to do that you don't know how to do.
absolutely. Yep.
Two
Yeah,
easy
I
questions.
envision along the lines of a big round table.
Yep.
Yes.
Just we're going to come and real quick hit, just like
Yep.
Bill's saying. What are you doing? What do you want to do? And then let's just open the floor up for discussions.
And I think in the future, one of our community of practice events has to be in Acadicus,
Mm,
as all of
Yeah,
us in our headsets,
that's a
you
great
know,
idea.
like
sounds
Yep.
fun.
physically in there. And we can join a lab, and then we can always go into everybody else's lab, right? So we can have, whoever the administrator of that would be, whoever signs in as the admin on that, or whatever it may be. Maybe we all do. And we just, like, we go into, okay, let's go into 55, whatever, and let's check out this, because I did this and I want you to see it, and you tell me what you think and what are ways we can improve it. Because the conversations are wonderful. I totally agree. But some of the best work that we've gotten done as a trio has been the three of us standing in headset together going, all right, so what are we going to do with this? And what are we going to do with that? And it's
Yep.
great. Awesome.
Absolutely. And I'm going to not be here next Friday. We have the MDev Midwest Developer Conference, basically GDC for the Midwest. We're having that here on Friday in Madison. So I'm going to be attending that. But you all are welcome to continue on with Pulse Live if you're able to do this. It'd be great. But I'll be stepping out. Maybe I'll join and share my camera view of the
There you
developer
go.
conference, because it's
There you go.
we are game developers here at Acadicus. We're using game engines and game technologies, but we're using it to solve real world problems. So we draw from the game development community big time. There's a lot of inspiration that we get there. So I'm pretty active in that community and looking forward to MDev this year. So
Love
but
it.
that'll be next Friday. So
Exciting. Yeah,
awesome.
maybe we'll work that out.
Yeah. Well, thank you
Fantastic.
all. Let's we'll look forward to the next community of practice planning discussion. Let's get a date on the calendar for the three of us to talk about that, and then we'll get a date for early November or early December and let everybody know. So
Sounds good.
until then, happy
Yeah.
Halloween.
Good seeing you
Have a
guys.
great weekend. Yeah.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye.
Bye.